Welcome to Crimson Guitars and welcome to a new series of tutorials on fretwork. I'm doing a full refret followed by a full level crown polish and setup on an SG. But not just any SG. This SG is Kelly Jones's first SG, his number one. The Beast. Basically, well, I'm very, very excited to be working on this guitar. Kelly Jones's Stereophonics is pretty much Stereophonics, and this is his favorite guitar. Now, over the years, it has had many, many, many level crown and polishes. Levels, crowns, and polishes. How would one say that? And while the frets up at the dusty end are not too bad, up at the nut, the first few frets are just far too flat. You don't have any room to crown them anymore. The intonation is going out, and very reluctantly, Kelly has decided that this needs to be done. So we have several things. This guitar is well, it's a standard, very nice SG. The headstock has been broken, so all is right with the world. And you know, he's used it on every tour that the Stereophonics have had, basically. Now, where it becomes interesting to me is it has nibs, it has binding. The frets are put in flush. The binding is put over the edge, and then. So the binding covers the ends of the frets. This is something Gibson do. I don't know, personally I find it quite comfortable, and it's all well and good, except for the fact that over the years, with subsequent re-levelings, the ends of the frets have been leveled just a little bit more than the radius of the fretboard. The nibs have gone down, and Kelly is now finding that as he plays, he falls off the edge of the fretboard. And this is not good enough. Now, when I first saw this, I thought, what the hell, excellent. I'm gonna, try and save the nibs, and you make the frets the exact same size as the binding, and go for that. And it's fiddly and difficult and a challenge and awesome fun. However, because he's falling off the edge of the fretboard, what we're gonna do is take the frets out, remove the nibs entirely, and then refret across the whole and across the top of the binding to give him more room to play. The trick is to try and make it feel as comfortable as it does currently with those nibs. That will be fun. Anyway, I'm going to take you through the entire process, and we will be back soon. The first thing to do, this guitar is Kelly's favorite. It is set up the way he likes it set up, and when I give it back to him, I have to make sure that it is the same. Now, this is slightly problematic because I'm changing the frets. The frets I'm putting in are going to be taller. I'm going to have to adjust the bridge. I'm going to have to adjust the nut again, or maybe even make a new nut. It depends what. We'll debate the merits of adding shims or not, I don't know. Anyway, what I'm going to do first is get a feeler gauge out and measure where we happen to be. So this is the Crimson Guitars feeler gauge set, metric and imperial, and let's start at 0.2 mil, possibly, and that's actually a fairly good guess. So that's moving just a little bit. Now, not quite. Up we go. Yep, 0.23. 0.23, but the ones in the middle are much taller. So I'm going to write this down. and go from there. Ooh. Oh, we're getting there. 0.3. 0.33. Yeah, 0.33 the rest of the way. Crazy times. And now onto the, well, you can, I suppose the 12th fret is the best bet. And this is where we start combining feeler gauges to build up and see what we've got. Yeah, that's about right. So with a capo at the first fret, people measure relief in different places. I always used to do it at the top of the 12th fret. Frankly, if you measure the top of the 7th fret, that really is about, right, oh, first time, 0.3. And so you hold down at the end of the guitar, yeah, 0.33 relief. I like feeler gauges. However, there are also little string height gauges. We don't make these actually at Crimson Guitars yet, and they are quite good for double and triple checking. Things like action and break angles and break angles. Action and relief. So I don't really trust them though, that's the problem. I always do it with the calipers first and then double check with this. And quite frankly, I'm happy. I have my measurements written down. I know what the relief is, and I now need to move forward with figuring out what to do. One last thing I want to check quickly is, just because I'm being paranoid really, or a geek, shall we say, is what we're doing here. Yep, it's obviously that's aha. The radius of the bridge is fairly set. Now, what will have changed? Yeah, the radius of the nut is different. It's flatter, which is kind of to be expected. And once I've taken the strings off, I'm going to check the radius of the fretboard and the frets themselves and see where we're at. Now the last thing we want to do is shock the neck. When you're taking strings off, do it gently, especially if you're taking all the strings off. Do not grab the strings and just snip. You can, well, apparently, according to Luthier Christopher, he's seen a neck snap through doing that. And we have a headstock that has already been broken before. So, yeah, be careful, basically. Once they're all loose and detensioned, feel free to snap away if necessary, although these seem quite new and could probably go on a cigar box guitar or something, so waste not, want not, as they say. So this is the fun bit now. These frets have been crowned and changed and crowned and leveled and stoned, or whatever you want to call it, so many times that what we have is not what we started out with. Now, so that's 10. It started out at 12. In fact, the fretboard is still roughly 12. But yeah, the top of the frets here is closer to a 10, but it still rolls off quite massively at the edges, to the point where what we have on the top of these frets is actually 7.5, well, 7.25, at least on those. Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. So when the leveling has been done, we've ended up with a completely different radius on the frets to what the guitar is designed and supposed to have. Now my problem is, what do I do? What do I do? The client loves how this guitar plays. This is the guitar that he loves. Do I... Well, I do. I've got no choice, really. If I... Okay, so here we go. The board is roughly 12 inches, a 12-inch radius. The frets are roughly 7.25, and I'm going to check the rest and see if that changes. I suspect, actually, it's going to end up being a compound radius. Yeah, exactly. So the only option I really have is to take these frets out, level the board underneath, and create a 7.25 to 12-inch compound radius. And that means when I put my frets in, nice and flat and properly, they will end up at that compound radius that Kelly likes, that he needs. I am going to have to remove these frets, of course. Now, before I do that, I'm going to have to measure them, so I'll make sure that I replace them with the correct size. And I'm also going to remove this nut, because whatever happens, because I'm raising the height of the frets, I'm going to have to replace the nut. Now, either replace the nut or shim it. So, get yourself a nice flathead screwdriver and a little hammer, and just gently tap. And this will break the glue joint and allow you to take the nut out. Now, if there had been a very thick layer of lacquer down the edges, I would have had to go in with a scalpel and sort that out. There we go. But we didn't need that. And here we discover that this nut has already been shimmed. You can see sandpaper. Let's do my nails while I'm here. Yeah, that's got a layer of sandpaper under there. Is that a good shim? I've used it before, not recently. But anyway, so the frets that I have here are jumbos, but the height is basically 0.85 millimeters up at the nut, and the last fret is 1.1 millimeters. Now, well, it looks to my eyes that the 15th is taller. No, 1.1. Now, width-wise, I've got wire that matches exactly. That's not a problem whatsoever. 2.4. Height-wise, we're going for a standard jumbo, which is 1.4 mil high. The trick is then to make that height feel as close to this as we can. So, I was hearing a rattle, and it's actually the bridge, or the tailpiece there. There we go. Okay, good. The time has come to remove the frets, and this requires heat. You have several options. You can use a soldering iron, and let's pretend that my screwdriver here is a soldering iron. You hold the soldering iron on the fret, warm it up a little bit, and basically, whether the fret is glued in or not, that will release. If it's glued, it releases the glue a little bit and allows you to pull it out without causing too much damage to the fretboard. If you haven't glued the fret in, or if they haven't glued the fret in, it does expand the wood, soften the wood up a little bit, and also allow you to remove the fret. I always use heat. Now, what I've taken to doing recently is actually using a hot air gun, sparingly, but I do use a hot air gun. Now, the problem with that is when you have mother of toilet seat inlays and plastic binding and stuff, that won't work. So I'm off to get a soldering iron now. Okay, while the soldering iron warms up, let's just double check that's all on. While the soldering iron warms up, I'm going to prepare myself. We have here a set of Crimson Guitars fret pullers, and these are well used, and essentially they come in from the side, lift the fret, and you're good to go. The soldering iron has warmed up quite nicely, and it's time to warm the fret up. Now, we have several options. We can try and remove the nibs first, and those are these little bits of binding at the end of each fret. We can try and remove those, which would work, or see what happens if we try and remove them as we lift the fret. Crikey. Okay, this is very soft fret wire. There's a major difference. It's warm, not massively hot. So that there, you have a lot of gunk. And yeah, it seems to be, that worked actually, without too much hassle. So spend a little bit of time warming up the board. Sorry, warming up the fret. And what I actually saw was, warming the first fret up, I could see a change in the oil on the fretboard. There you go. As the wood starts to heal up, the oil or wax that they've put on this board slightly changes colour, which tells me that it's time to go. And that came out with, the first fret came out with very little issue. So, right from the edge of the fret, go in with just the tip of your fret pullers. Literally just the tip. You really don't want to use the whole thing. Essentially, we've got a grind right on the edge, so that's really sharp and will get in. But in the middle, it's nice and substantial to give it strength to allow you to push. Now, move along 3 or 4 mil at a time along the length of the fret, closing it gently. And I'm also pushing down on the fretboard so that as I lift the tangs through the wood, I'm holding the wood down so that we don't have any tear out or rip out, because that would not be good. And yeah, this is going fairly well, I'd say. From this angle you might be able to see the finish of the fretboard just go off as we reach temperature. I'm never sure if holding it in one place for a while is better than spreading the heat evenly. Can you see that the finish there? There we go. So I tend to work from this side, right at the tip, and that lifts it up enough to start going in. Whatever you do, don't rock like that. That would put dents in your board. And despite the fact that this time round we are going to be re-leveling the board and changing that a little bit, we don't want to put dents where we don't need them. I'm about halfway down and thinking about things that I should be telling you. First of all soldering irons are not created equal. This one has a big spade bit, and it says it's 40 watts. I don't know what that means, but this one feels hotter than your average garden variety soldering iron. I've had a 12-watt beastie that just wasn't up to the task. Now, with a spade bit, it transfers the heat much quicker. If you've got a pointy bit that looks like the tip of a pencil or something like that, it's got a very small surface area to transfer the heat over. That's one. Two, you really don't want to slip and hit your fretboard. In this case, we are going to be doing reshaping and sanding and leveling and all that. However, you would also, well, for example, if I slipped and hit that celluloid in there, I would be in trouble, quite frankly. If you're doing a Strat or something with a maple fretboard, same problem. Just be very, very careful. Now, I have seen people who will basically run the soldering iron along in front of the fret pullers. Let's concentrate while I do this. As you can see, it's not necessary, and these frets were actually glued in. I can see the remnants of some sort of glue. I'm not sure what. Essentially, I really don't think, I think running the soldering iron along in the front of your nippers, or fret pullers at least, as you go, just runs the risk of you slipping and burning the fretboard. It's, I don't think it's necessary. Now, the big no-no, honestly and seriously, if you have to rock your fret pullers either that way or that way in order to lift your fret up, then you need to get a better pair of fret pullers, or at the very least, if you make them yourselves, rethink the way that you've made them. If you can't, if the ends of your fret pullers are not sharp enough to get underneath a fret, then they are not fret pullers, they are just end cutters, and yeah, just not good enough. The last thing you want to do is refinish the fretboard, especially if you've got a maple board that you're working on. You don't want to put dents into the guitar. It's our job to take them out, not put them in. And finally, I was just talking about watching the wax finish just start to discolor as I'm warming this up. If I'm lucky that this guitar has that sort of a finish that reacts at that temperature. If you're actually discoloring the wood, or again a lacquered board, you have serious problems. Don't do that. Please, 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 please don't do that. There we go, nice and easy. There is another trick, and that is to use a fretboard guard. Now, fret guards are bits of shim steel with a slot cut into it. The slot goes around around the fret, and they're generally used for crowning frets. These are basically, as you're pulling the fret, it pushes down on the fretboard and pushes down a little bit more than we do with this. I've tried it, I've done it several times, it seems to work, but it also puts your fret pullers just that much higher off the fretboard. And frankly, I would never bother doing that on a fretboard like this that is coming out nice and easily. Although you can see, do you see me pull that? You can see the glue. There's some sort of, it must be epoxy, I suppose. Yeah, I think that's epoxy. Anyway, if they're coming out easily without chips, don't do it. However, if you have a fretboard that is really being difficult and cantankerous, then try a fretboard guard underneath your fret puller to help spread the tension and spread the pressure at least, and minimize the lifting out, tear out. Here we have the frets all out now. The next stage is to double check, see what you've got. We don't have any chips really that have torn out. There's a couple of places where it's a little bit unstable, and that tends to be right at the end of the slot. Now, I am going to be sanding this whole thing down with a leveling beam. If you were not, the next stage is to clean the top of the fret slots. Make sure you don't have any chip out. If you do, repair them. And that's as simple as putting a little bit of super glue in place. So, yeah. But we don't have any of those this time, which is good, I don't think.